Oh, hi. Welcome,
Hello,
everybody,
hello.
to Dune Book Club. We did it. We finished Dune, you guys. We did it. I'm so excited. You sign now, but there's several more to go. This is only the
No,
beginning.
I don't have to ever read again.
No, no.
Like anything.
Ever.
Hooray, hooray. Yeah, so we just read the last 3 chapters. Did you guys also read through those appendices, talking through like the houses and the Bene Gesserit and all that stuff too?
I just read the chapters.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I read the first one because it was actually like I started reading a couple of the other ones and I was like, these aren't interesting to me. I kind of already get the gist of these.
Yeah, the Harkonnen breakdown is not that special. But the Kynes history was crazy. That one's interesting. Nice. So we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is Dune Book Club. We've been reading Dune for the last several weeks, and we're done. But really, let's talk about it. So everybody hopefully is in the chat. We're going to give people a chance to kind of... Oh, thanks for the follow, Brian G. McWhorter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
KP Gart says, bone knife fights, just my style, and huge, long, thick worms. Yay, Gerper Kern! Got the book club time off. Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, Dune. We did it.
Dune.
So everything comes to a head in these last few chapters. Like all of it, all the stuff we've been waiting for happens, which is very exciting. Let me pull up, sorry, my little study guide thing. Chapter summaries. Schmoop. Chapter 46 is where we're starting.
What does that one start with? What's the beginning?
This is Paul kind of overseeing their before they make their attack.
Sorry, the actual, like, the first words. I'm looking for the...
And the day that dawned when Arrakis lay at the hub of the universe when the wheel poised to spin. Go ahead. Oh my.
Got it.
Cool. Huzzah. Yeah, so this one, this chapter is kind of preparatory, and then it does the badass thing where they blow shit up, which I like a lot. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at the Emperor's War Camp, and Paul just thinks it's cute that they have their shield wall up, and think that makes a difference at all to them. They also mock the Emperor for bringing down all of his like lackeys and hairdressers are even mentioned. Like he brought everybody down because he's so comfortable and content and kind of spoiled. And I love that every time they talk about the storm, it becomes more and more ancient version of grandmother. It's a grandmother of a storm. It's a great grandmother of a storm. It's a great great grandmother. It's a great 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 grandmother of a storm. We're all gonna die. We've got.
We have not seen the likes of the storm before.
Like that. Gurney is a little gloomy, and Stilgar tries to like cheer him up. It's like, nah, Gurney's fine. That's just how he do.
Yep. And they bring up the fact that, like, sir, you really want to use atomics here now? Like, there's gonna be some issues, dude.
I love that there's 9 levels to the Emperor's ship.
Yeah.
And this is just the one that he took to land, so it's not the same as like the carriers that they launched from. 9 levels to it, 5 legions of Sardaukar on the ship.
And they also describe it as like a hutment, like it looks like a metal tent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have so all that's left of they've already pushed the Harkonnens into like a specific territory. Only this basin and the city remain to the enemy. He swung the telescope to the far side of the Airkeen landing field to the Harkonnen frigates lined up there with the Chom Company banner waving gently from its staff on the ground beneath them. And he thought of the desperation that had forced the guild to permit these 2 groups to land while all others were held in reserve. The guild was like a man testing the sand with his toe to gauge its temperature before erecting a tent. I like that. He's good stuff. A lot of this is just Paul being like, all right, go make sure this area is clear. Go make sure those guys are captured. Beep, bop, boop. Just going through the motions of battle planning. And
also everyone trying to tell him, like, hey, you should probably, like, get in the cover and stuff. And then he's like, I've seen it. It's fine.
Right. I'll be fine.
Yeah, this is very much the chapter where everything was just calm before everything was going to happen. Like, not a lot happened. Because there was so much going to happen right after this.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, this is like the Paul flexing chapter. This is where we know he's got a handle on it, and so they have to illustrate that every few seconds. It was like, but what about? It's like, no, I've got it. It's like, they know we're here. I think now they wait to choose their own time. It's like, we choose the time, Paul said. Gurney glanced upward, growled, if they let us. That fleet will stay in space, Paul said. Gurney shakes his head. They have no choice. We can destroy the spice. The guild dares not risk that. I love this. Like, desperate people are the most dangerous. Are we not desperate? Stilgar asked. And just scowls at him. Let's see. They don't dare. For the same reason, they cannot risk our destroying the source of the spice. And they're talking about injunctions and laws. And Paul's just specifying and clarifying that it's fear, not the injunction, that keeps the houses from hurling atomics against each other. The language of the Great Convention is clear enough. Use of atomics against humans shall be cause for planetary obliteration. We're going to blast the shield wall, not humans. I love his little caveat, his way to maneuver around getting in trouble for using atomic weapons. He's like, and he defines that later, like his excuse, or like why the Emperor should be mad about it. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, I used atomics to clear a path so I could get closer to you, Mr. Emperor guy. Tigran says, Gurney does bring up a good point. Their plan requires them to use atomics. The Great Convention states no atomics will be used. Oh, yep, just talked about that. Paul gets another update on the storm. Still en route to hit the shield wall dead on. Paul orders his gunners to set their sights before the storm renders them blind. Because they know, like, basically all their targets are lined up, ready to fire, and then they can still shoot in the sand because everything's pointing correctly already. Gurney eventually blows it up. He rocks the entire planet, and the next chapter also lines up to that moment. So we get that another one of those things where those two moments line up. Mm-hmm.
He also mentions not only is the storm like coming, he's like, this is my storm. Like, he's responsible for why it came.
Mm-hmm. I also love that the bomb is hit by a red button. Message hard. This is also where we found out that Paul's son has died. And they captured Alia, his sister. And I love that Paul is using the Sardaukar prowess as a weakness. It's like, it's been so long since guerrillas were effective that the mighty have forgotten how to fight them. He's like, the Sardaukar recruit for us, Stilgar. And like, this is where you get to see Paul as like a fucking bare knuckle monster type of ruler. Because they're like, the city people do seem eager. It's like, their hate is fresh and clear. That's why we'll use them as shock troops. It's like, the slaughter among them will be fearful, Gurney said. Stilgar nodded. It's like, they were told the odds. They know every Sardaukar they kill will be one less for us. You see, gentlemen, they have something to die for. They've discovered there are people. They're awakening. But like, full on, just like, yep, just hit the front lines for us. People who don't know how to fight, just go be meat shields. Pretty fucked up. But effective. It's very effective.
True.
This is where the flagpole. Fucking flagpole. Okay, so this is the whole thing where he's like, he's told the Emperor, hey, this is who I am. It's me. I'm Leto's kid. I am now the Duke, so you need to recognize me. And then, Allie Briggs, thank you for the follow. Hello.
Thank you.
We were just talking about you. KP Gart was on here mentioning your art. So, welcome. So if the Emperor recognized my claim, he'll signal by restoring the Atreides flag to Arrakis. We'll use the second plan then, move only against the Harkonnens. The Sardaukar will stand aside and let us settle the issue between ourselves. So if the Emperor recognizes me as Duke, we can just take out the Harkonnens, they'll leave, we regain control peaceably, whatever. And then they raise the Chum Company flag, which is like the pure bureaucracy response of just like, I don't give a fuck who rules this planet. I just want my spice. Make it happen. So that's the Emperor just being like, whoop, fuck you guys.
But also not directly supporting the Harkonnens either.
Correct.
They could have.
Yeah, it's like the non-committal.
Yeah.
Like, don't give a fuck about you or who you want to fight.
Yeah. Let's see. This is where they set their guns before visibility drops. Very close to the surface here, my lord. Should the Harkonnens try to retaliate in kind? Says they're in no position to retaliate, Paul said. They're just now finding out that they have no shields and are unable to get off Arrakis. Because not only did they bomb the shield wall, like they bombed the wall that the storm's going to take out the shield, Once the shield was gone, they shot off the noses of all the ships, so no one can get out without, permission or assistance. So everybody is stuck. As we find out that Paul's son is dead. He says, "My son is dead," and he knew it as he spoke it that it was true. "My son is dead, and Alia is a captive, hostage." He said he felt empty, a shell without emotions. Everything he touched brought death and grief, and it was like a disease that could spread across the universe. He could feel the old man wisdom, the accumulation out of the experiences from countless possible lives. Something seemed to chuckle and rub its hands within him. And Paul thought, how little the universe knows about the nature of real cruelty. Fuck. Super prescient kid, now fully embracing the jihad he's been trying to avoid. With, glee, legit maniacal glee internally. That's, it's unsettling and a little depressing. But what a cool moment. And that's it for 46. 46 is pretty short. It's all prep. 47 is where we have the Baron and the Emperor all just kind of holed up together with little captured Alia creeping them the fuck out. I love her so much. So this is the Emperor now flexing on the Baron, because the Baron's so used to treating people terribly and all this stuff, but it's fun to see him have to be submissive and know that he's fucked, no matter what he does. We also see the return of the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohaim. Oh yeah, they brought his throne with him. They brought this giant, solid piece crystal throne for him to sit on, along with all of his pages, hairdressers, and oh gosh, they break it down. Everyone who came with him. So it's a blue-green throne.
It's just carved from a single piece of Hegel quartz. It's crazy.
I love that. They did. Oh, we also see 2 guild steersmen, or rather 2 guild agents. Tall and fat, one short and fat, both with bland gray eyes. Which is such an interesting thing, because we'll get to why that's interesting in a bit. Baron says, "I came at your summons, Majesty." And they just make fun of him. They just keep making fun of the Baron. It's awesome.
We also meet Princess Irulan.
Oh, yeah. We don't get much of her personality in this book. But yeah, she's there. We know that she's a trained Bene Gesserit, so she's probably got all the similar qualities to someone like Jessica, but probably not the same sort of life experience. She's been in the lap of luxury her entire life, but she's smart. So this is also where you find out that the Emperor completely knows about Thufir. And the Baron's like, he's like, yeah, so where's Thufir? He's like, I
haven't seen him in 5 days.
I haven't seen him in 5
well,
days.
Isn't that bad? He's like,
No, not really, because he'll die, because he's got that latent poison, because they feed him the antidote in his food.
Yep.
So if he goes without it. How clever of you, Baron. The storm comes, perimeter, la la la. I love that he complained, the Emperor, you learn a lot about him just by the things that he's concerned about. He's like, I'm not to speak of how much time this Arrakis nonsense has taken from me, nor the Chome Company profits pouring down this rat hole, nor the court functions and affairs of state I've had to delay, even cancel because of this stupid affair. He's mad he's had to cancel parties. That's why he's down here. He's like, you're making my job hard. He's like, does he mean to kill me? I don't know. So they have hostages. Oh yeah, this is a. So as people scream his name as they leap into battle, the women throw their babies at us and hurl themselves onto our knives to open a wedge for their men to attack us. They have no decency. That is the fervor that Paul has brought these people to. So again, that jihad is fucking happening. It's happening right now. That's crazy. Let's see. Spice in these latitudes. Oh, this is where the Baron gets schooled on the fact that there are actually a shit ton of Fremen out there in the desert that no one wanted to explore. The Emperor. Oh, this is where Alia just starts talking shit. So here he is, she said. She advanced to the edge of the dais. He doesn't appear much, does he? One frightened old fat man too weak to support his own flesh without the help of suspensors. And they're like, oh. Again, she's a little 4-year-old body. And he thinks that she's a little person. And this is where he finds out that Paul is Muad'Dib and all that other stuff, that he's alive, all this crap. Oh yeah, and you also learn that Alia was in charge of this group of Fremen. Like, little tiny Alia was out there fucking killing fools and leading other Fremen to like slaughter Harkonnens.
And then she let herself be captured, so she didn't have to be there when her brother found out about his son.
And while they're all making these like huge like state moves and conversations, she just like hops up on a bench and starts like kicking her legs like a little kid. Super cute. So Baron suggests attacking, and the Emperor tells him to shut up, which is also great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the child seated on the dais stopped kicking her feet, said, "Make him afraid some more, Shaddam. I shouldn't enjoy this, but I find the pleasure impossible to suppress." Just watching the Baron sweat. Let's see. My father was never his ally, the child said. My father is dead, and this old Harkonnen beast has never seen me before. I am Alia, daughter of Duke Leto and the Lady Jessica, sister of Duke Paul Muad'Dib, she said. Pushed herself off the dais, dropped to the floor of the audience chamber. My brother has promised to have your head atop his battle standard, and I think he shall. I was like, shut up, kid. Be a child. This is where you figure out like how fucking powerful and scary Alia actually is. Because the Reverend Mother, she basically gets into her head. The old woman points a finger at Alia. Get out of my mind! And he's like, TP, the Emperor whispered. He snapped his attention back to Alia. By the Great Mother! And the Reverend Mother says, You don't understand, Majesty, the old woman said. Not telepathy. She's in my mind. She's like the ones before me, the ones who gave me their memories. She stands in my mind. She cannot be there, but she is. It's like, what others? What is this nonsense? She's like, oh, not supposed to talk about it. Bene Gesserit's secrets. So she's like able to plant herself in the past with those past lives. So it's like she's like looped herself into that chain somehow, even though she was born after. It's just, she's this weird, again, abomination. Oh yeah, and then Alia takes out freaking Baron like a boss, and that's why she's there. That's the real reason she's there. She's like, yeah, I'm supposed to kill him.
With the Gom Jabbar.
With the Gom Jabbar. I'm sorry, grandfather, Alia said. You've met the Atreides Gom Jabbar. She got to her feet, dropped a dark needle from her hand, and he's like, blah, blah, and he dies. But he... Oh yeah.
Such a kind of sad and like stupid way for him to go. He was just there. He was already being kind of pitiful and like this like lower, just brought down from his height in that place, and the little girl just goes.
I mean, I do appreciate it more than the way the movie did it, which was like they blew a hole in the ship and he floats away into space.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Oh gosh.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I love that Alia plays him too. Like she knows what she knows fully that he's going to try and like smash her brains against the floor. So she plays into that. She's like, "Oh, you gotta catch me!" And then he grabs her and she's like, "Stab, stab." Oh god, I love it. And this is where they learn that they shot the nose off the ship. They can't escape. They're realizing the shield is down. This is when the boom actually hits. So the explosion from the previous chapter happens at this moment, right after the Baron dies, and they realize they're fucking trapped. We will make our stand here, the Emperor orders. La la la. Save yourself, into the ship, blah blah blah.
And I really like how Ollie just keeps telling them that like her brother's coming. She gives all these like ominous warnings about you guys don't know what's gonna happen, but he's coming, and you have no idea what it's gonna be like. Still threatening. It's great.
Out of the sand haze came an orderly mass of flashing shapes, great rising curves with crystal spokes that resolved into the gaping mouths of the sandworms, a massed wall of them, each with troops of Fremen riding to the attack. They came in a hissing wedge, robes whipping in the wind as they cut through the melee on the plain. How badass!
Yeah, I really want to see people riding sandworms into battle.
Especially the one, like that new design, they're monstrous. They're so big. Man. Yeah, and something like part of my brain is upset that we don't get the full details of every element of the battle, but also it lets my imagination paint it for me, which it's kind of a toss-up. I get it both ways. I would have liked a little more action. Like, I want to know how they utilize the sandworms. Like, do they steer them into, like, ships? Are they using them to fight? Or is it just transport? They dismount and then they fight? I wanted that kind of detail. I wanted tactical detail.
Yeah, I was bummed that we got to this point and then the next chapter just skips forward. It's like I would have taken a small chapter, like 2 or 3 pages. Just give me like a general idea of what happened, and I guess that's why maybe when the second movie happens in this new movies, this will probably take up a whole bunch of that movie.
Yeah.
Seeing the battle and everything.
Sure. Yeah, it's like, like was it like with those Hobbit movies, the Battle of the Five Armies. In the book, Bilbo gets knocked unconscious, so he wakes up and it's over. Like, he sees the armies come to battle and it's like thonk, and he's out, and he wakes up, it's over, and everyone's like, ow, my head. So they filled an entire movie of those moments where he's like unconscious. I guess I didn't make it to that one, but I'm guessing they put something in that movie. Oh, and this is where like one of the guild guys' contacts pops out, which is so funny. Like, it's like they're hiding their blue on blue eyes because I guess it's unsettling to people, so that's why they had those gray eyes earlier. I just thought that was so interesting. Like, why? So I doubt it's a secret. Everyone knows they need the spice to fold space, so maybe it's purely cosmetic, which is odd. KP Gar says, I was just typing that about The Hobbit. Yeah, I don't like those movies, but yeah, so very similar. And I mean, the cool thing is, it's like, I want to see more of this. I don't necessarily need to see more of what was in The Hobbit. I'm all about the visual details that we don't get. Like, I'm already all about the new Dune design across the board. Iffy on the initial Caladan armor, but everything else looks cool. Summon Count Fenring from his quarters. That's the end of that one. This is up next is the last chapter, I believe. So let me click on that. Make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, this is where so Paul comes home. Basically, he goes back to the Arakeen governor's mansion, which is where Atreides was, and they're like, basically, if we fill this space, our victory is certain, and they must,
address us,
barter with us, yeah. Or barter. He has no interest in bartering.
We will take what we want.
And then Paul tells his troops to be like, finish him off. Do what you got to do. Clean up the house. Don't touch anything in the house. Just kill everyone inside, which is such like a dope thing. It's like, don't break anything, but make sure everyone's murdered. So I didn't like this place then, and I like it less now. One of our caves would be safer. And this is Gurney saying this, which is like he's kind of come around to the Arakeen way of life. Spoken like a true Fremen, Stilgar said. I love that. They became friends, finally. Makes me very happy. You could tell it was like an uneasy partnership for the last several chapters. This place is a symbol. Raban lived here. By occupying this place, I seal my victory for all to understand. Send men through the building. Touch nothing. Just be certain no Harkonnen people or toys remain. Boom. Wave of Fremen killing everybody. And this is where, again, another really dark moment for Paul. What's the extent of the storm damage? Paul asked. In the direct path, on the landing field, and across the spice storage yards of the plane, extensive damage, Gurney said. As much from battle as from the storm. Nothing money won't repair, I presume, Paul said. Except for the lives, my lord, Gurney said, and there was a tone of reproach in his voice, as though to say, when did an Atreides worry first about things when people were at stake? So he's like, oh, God, what's wrong with Paul?
I'm going crazy.
Gerberkern says, Paul is so brutally thorough. Yes, absolutely. He became the monster he was trying to avoid and embraced it. Yeah. Like, it's great. Terrible, but great.
We also kind of, right before this happens, is that we see that it's one of the moments I really liked, is after they arrive and they blow the hole in the wall to show up, Alias runs out and she just starts stabbing people. She just starts killing Harkonnen and Sardaukar that are on the ground dying. She just finishes people off as she walks by. And I think she keeps doing it throughout this whole scene.
Yeah.
She's out there just murdering.
And Jessica's even upset about it, too.
Yeah.
And Paul's like, it's basically, he says, like, it's kind, right? Like, it's like, they're dying. She's just finishing them off.
Oh. This is also where like Alia is able to send delayed messages to Paul within like the chambers of his mind. So she tells him what has happened, but she sent the message before it happened because she has a similar prescience to what Paul has. It's this whole fucking thing. So Paul closed his eyes, forcing grief out of his mind, letting it wait as he had once waited to mourn his father. Now he gave his thoughts over to this day's accumulated discoveries, the mixed futures of the hidden presence of Alia within his awareness. Of all the uses of time vision, this was the strangest. I have breasted the future and placed my words where only you can hear them, Alia had said. Even you cannot do that, my brother. I find it an interesting play. And, oh, yes, I've killed our grandfather, the demented old baron. He had very little pain. And he says, silence.
By the way.
I love that. This is another mention to the Sardaukar and their weakness of always being victorious, which is they'd never known anything but victory, which Paul realized could be a weakness in itself. He put that thought aside for later consideration in his own training program. He's already thinking to the future of perfecting his troops and doing his thing. This is so he's got captured Sardaukar and he's going to send them with messages. I have a message for you to carry to the Emperor, Paul said, and he couched his words in the ancient formula. I, a duke of a great house, an imperial kinsman, give my word of bond under the convention. If the emperor and his people lay down their arms and come to see me here, I will guard their lives with my own. Paul held up his left hand with the ducal signet for the Sardaukar to see. I swear it by this. And they threaten the shit out of the Sardaukar until he's like, yep, I'll do it. Let's see. Where are we? Shani and his mother, Jessica, have arrived. And this is like this weird, sad, egotistical power move, like internal thought moment. And Paul's just talking about his mother because she's coming. It's like, my mother's sick with longing for a planet she may never see, Paul said, where water falls from the sky and plants grow so thickly you cannot walk between them. Water from the sky, Stilgar whispered. In that instant, Paul saw how Stilgar had been transformed from the Fremen Nabe to a creature of the Lisan al-Gaib, a receptacle for awe and obedience. It was a lessening of the man, and Paul felt the ghost wind of the jihad in it. I've seen a friend become a worshipper, he thought. Which just sucked. It's like, well, he's not my friend anymore. He's just, he fed into the hype. He is now just a tool for me. It's not a person anymore.
Because he intended for them, some of those people, to just be like in on the, hey, I'm using this thing to get people to follow me. Because he was part of the plans initially when he like did those little ceremonies and stuff, and Stilgar was in on it, and somehow he like crossed over to really believe in it.
And then Muad'Dib from whom all blessings flow, he thought, and it was the bitterest thought of his life. They sense that I must take the throne, he thought, but they cannot know I do it to prevent the jihad. We also learned that Beast Raban is dead. Jessica stopped in front of Paul, looked down at him. She saw his fatigue and how he hid it, but found no compassion for him. It was as though she had been rendered incapable of any emotion for her son. So she's just as disconnected from him as everybody else. And oh yeah, this is the best. This is the part you were talking about. Where's Alia? She asked. Out doing what any good Fremen child should be doing at such times, Paul said. She's killing enemy wounded and marking their bodies for the water recovery teams. Paul! You must understand that she does this out of kindness, he said. Isn't it odd how we misunderstand the hidden unity of kindness and cruelty? Oh yeah, and then she's basically saying like, "Hey, everyone's creeped out by you, Paul. It's bad." And she's like, and he's kind of bitter about all of this because she helped create him. He's like, "How would you like to live billions upon billions of lives?" Paul asked. "There's a fabric of legends for you. Think of all those experiences, the wisdom they'd bring. But wisdom tempers love, doesn't it? And puts a new shape on hate. How can you tell what's ruthless unless you've plumbed the depths of both cruelty and kindness? You should fear me, mother. I am the Kwisatz Haderach." And she's like, "Fuck." And she's tried to swallow in a dry throat. Presently, she said, "Once you denied to me that you were the Kwisatz Haderach." He says, Paul shook his head. "I can deny nothing anymore." He looked up into her eyes. "The Emperor and his people come now. They will be announced any moment. Stand beside me. I wish a clear view of them. My future bride will be among them." And this is where he's basically saying, "I'm going to marry the princess because I need to." And everybody around him is just like, "Oh, he knew it was going to happen." Which has happened a few times already at this point. Oh my God. There are no innocent anymore, Paul said. Tell that to Shani, Jessica said, talking about his dead child son. You're like, oh, right, Paul, remember? You're a person, too? And, and she's crying. She gives water to the dead. And that's the one moment where he feels grief, but not because he's feeling it, but because of his sense, like, his, like, Kwisatz Haderach-iness. Her grief imprints on him. So he's feeling her grief, not his own, which I think is a very interesting distinction. He says, he cannot be replaced, Paul said, but there will be other sons. It is Usul who promises this. Just so...
He has way too many names. Fucking hard to keep track.
I'm a child of Tolkien. This is still light. And then he's also, Paul gets worried that he's going to lose Gurney the same way he just lost Stilgar, losing a friend to gain a creature. Some guild people. La la la. La la la. Thufir's around. He has a good moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then there's a weird moment where he doesn't know Lord Fenring's face.
Yeah.
And it freaks him out. He's like, why don't I know his face? Why have I never seen this guy? Like, what's going on? Is he the one who kills me? Is this why this is darkness? Because everything described is like, everything's leading up to that moment of pure blindness. And like the beginning of this battle was sort of one, but not complete. Like, he was still able to plan and see and know when people were coming and going. But it's like he's getting closer to that moment of like, I don't know. So he's like, fuck, I don't know this guy. This is the I don't know. It's probably this guy. It's like, have I been denied a glimpse of this man? Because he's the one who kills me, Paul wondered.
And then we did. I don't know what jump ahead, but then we never find out anything.
Yeah, you do.
Did we?
Yeah. The reason that he doesn't kill Paul later is that reason. They're like, they have this kinship because he was like an early experiment. Yes. Yeah, he was supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach.
He was like an almost.
Yeah, so they share that same sort of like wavelength, just like the guildsmen. So it's like one of those, like, they couldn't see each other because they are essentially the same.
Yeah. It's Harry Potter and Neville. It's
yeah. Thufir comes through and he dies a good man. That makes me happy. So he gets caught up on the truth, which is cool. Somebody at least told him what was what. He's like, I'm so sorry. But still, he agreed to the Emperor because the Emperor was like, it will be betrayal. I'll have Thufir go in and stab him. So he gives Thufir a poison needle and he's like, all right, you're going to go up and embrace him and kill him. And Thufir can't do it. And I love his quote for that. If I can find it. Oh, yeah. See, Majesty, he called, see your traitor's needle. Did you think that I, who've given my life to service of the Atreides, would give them less now? Those are his last fucking words before he dies. And Paul holds him as he dies, and it's just like this nice moment of just like forgiveness and understanding, and like, it's cool. And also a really nice, good fuck you to the Emperor and the Harkonnens and everybody else, which Thufir's been waiting for forever. And now this is the moment where the Emperor is just like, fuck. Oh yeah. Perhaps my respected kinsman believes he has things all his own way now. Nothing could be more remote from fact. You have violated the convention. Used atomics against... He's like, I used atomics against a natural feature of the desert, Paul said. It was in my way, and I was in a hurry to get to you, Majesty, to ask your explanation for some of your strange activities. And then Emperor tries to threaten. It's like, I've got an armada in the sky. He's like, you won't risk it. He's like, oh yes, I almost forgot about them. He looks at the guildsmen. Are those the guild agents, Gurney, the two fat ones dressed in gray over there? Yes. He's like, you two. Get out there immediately and dispatch sages. And he's basically telling them, like, tell them to go home. Tell them to go home right now. And they're like, we don't take your orders, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, I'll destroy it. I'll nuke this entire planet. I don't mind dying. You all want to die? Because if he cuts off the spice, all that stuff. And they know he's not bluffing. And that knowledge is the thing that wins him this scene, is that he has the knowledge to destroy it. He's like, do you doubt me? And they're like, nope, he'll do it. Fuck, let's go. Make the calls. And then, where was it? Oh, Paul calls out the Emperor for being a failure, which I love. Paul turned back.
You were allowed to be on the throne, not even like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You
They
have no real
permitted
power.
you to mount your father's throne. It was only on the assurance that you'd keep the spice flowing. You failed them, Majesty. Do you know the consequences? It's like, nobody permitted me. Stop playing the fool. The guild is like a village beside a river. They need the water, but can only dip out what they require. They cannot dam the river and control it because that focuses attention on what they take. It brings down eventual destruction. The spice flow, that's their river. And I have built a dam, but my dam is such that you cannot destroy it without destroying the river. And they're like, shit. And this is where Reverend Mother freaks out because she's realizing all this stuff is true as well. I welcomed you to the ranks of humans, she muttered. Don't besmirch that. This is talking of abominations and Alia and all of that stuff. And Paul starts yelling at her. It's like, observe her, comrades. This is a Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother, patient in a patient cause. She could wait with her sisters 90 generations for the proper combination of genes and environment to produce the one person their schemes required. Observe her. She knows now that the 90 generations have produced that person. Here I stand, but I will never do her bidding. So it's like, congratulations, Bene Gesserits, you did it, and I don't work for you.
Yep.
She's like, Jessica, silence him. Jessica's like, silence him yourself. And then he starts spilling Bene Gesserit secrets, talking about their human breeding plan, which is it's kind of like an open secret. I feel like a lot of the royalty knows about it, but probably not the people. Like their entire religion is built around that sense of control, figuring that out. Oh, this is my favorite part. You mustn't speak of these things, the old woman hissed. Silence, Paul roared. The words seemed to take substance as it twisted through the air between them under Paul's control. The old woman reeled back into the arms of those behind her, face blank with shock at the power with which he had seized her psyche. Jessica, she whispered. Jessica. I remember your Gom Jabbar, Paul said. You remember mine. I can kill you with a word. Like, fuck. And he means that literally. He could just speak death into you. Because there's another legend, Fremen legend, and his word shall carry death eternal to those who stand against righteousness. It says, you dare an adventurer without a family, a nobody? You've already admitted who I am. Royal kinsman, you said. Let's stop this nonsense. Leading into, skip ahead. Khan Lee, the ancient vendetta, the fight to the death. Fade Routha wants to fight. Or rather, Paul, and Paul takes him on, and Gurney's pissed. Because Gurney's like, you promised me a Harkonnen. And he's like, yeah, but you got a lot of them.
Yeah.
You got most of them. So this is where Fade strips down to his male bikini, his, call it a girdle in this, but yeah, it's basically that. And I love the poison weapon, because it's like, how, you can't unsilly the image, because the poison needle is like in the hip of this metal girdle that he wears to protect his junk. And he's like trying to like thrust his hip into Paul to stab him with this needle. Or it shoots darts, I think, right? It fires the dart. So he's like aiming it because it like whizzes past his ear at some point. And it's a quick fight. And I love that they're outthinking each other. And Fade is a better fighter than we've been led to believe. Because in the arenas, his opponents are always poisoned, or he uses those command words and all that stuff. But he's trained both ways, so it's like he leads in, knowing what Paul knows about him, and fights that way at first, and then changes it up, being like, "Nope, I actually know what I'm doing." Haha. It's a cool, fun fight. Paul, of course, wins, but that moment, that fight, is the moment that he can't see. That was the blind moment. That was the moment where all things, like that's the nexus. And then he kills. Fade stabs him right through the bottom of the jaw, straight to the brain, using his Chris knife. And I love... Huh? Oh, I can't.
I want to see that.
Yes. Where is it? I love that when they start the fight... Oh, no. Where is it? Because they do... Fade says... Ow. Where's the start? I forget. Basically, Fade does the traditional greeting, or like the traditional opening of a Conley fight between the royal houses, but Paul responds with the Fremen, may thy knife chip and shatter. Just to be a badass. And this is where the guildsmen also don't know what the fuck is happening. So they're accustomed to seeing the future, Paul thought. In this place and time, they're blind, even as I am. And he sampled the time winds, sensing the turmoil, the storm nexus that now focused on this moment place. Even the faint gaps were closed now. Here was the unborn jihad, he knew. Here was the race consciousness that he had known once as his own terrible purpose. Here was reason enough for Kwisatz Haderach or Lisan al-Gaib or even the halting schemes of the Bene Gesserit. The race of humans had felt its own dormancy, sensed itself grown stale, and knew now only the need to experience turmoil in which the genes would mingle and the strong new mixtures survive. All humans were alive as an unconscious single organism in this moment, experiencing a kind of sexual heat that could override any barrier. And Paul saw how futile were any of the efforts of his to change any of the smallest bit of this. He had thought to oppose the jihad within himself, but the jihad would be. His legions would rage out from Arrakis even without him. They needed only the legend he had already become. He had shown them the way, given them mastery, even over the guild, which must have the spice to exist. So he's like, well, it's too late. If I die, if I live, it's still happening. My legions will spread across the universe, with or without me. And how ballsy for a writer to have a character literally say, this is the climax. From here, the future will open, the clouds part onto a kind of glory. And if I die here, they'll say I sacrificed myself that my spirit might lead them. And if I live, they'll say nothing can oppose Muad'Dib. Oh yeah, is the Atreides ready, was the opening question. And then, may thy knife chip and shatter. Stabby stab. This could be a major catastrophe for the Bene Gesserit breeding scheme. The Atreides youth had called the Harkonnen cousin, which means that he knew his ancestry, which is a big... Basically, all of his knowledge is bad news for the Bene Gesserit. Their secrets are exposed. He knows them all. He knows all their tricks because he is them. Yes, Gripper Kern, the Chris knife is made with a maker's tooth. Prepare your spirit for its journey. Fade just talks a lot of shit, trying to distract him. This is where he finds the flip dart. Fade is dead. Soporific. Oh, that's the other thing. So Paul pretends to be affected by this soporific, this like muscle slower thing that he gets infected with, but because he is the Kwisatz Haderach, just much like creating the catalyst for the seed, he changes the molecular structure of this poison, but then acts as if it affects him to throw off Feyd-Rautha, and that's how he gains that thing. And it's interesting because he says like, I'm not going to use the words to like stall Feyd-Rautha, but he still says something. And that still stalls Feyd-Rautha, and I love that. It's like, I will not say it! And Feyd-Rautha's, because he's yelling at himself in his own mind. But that does it. Kills him. This is where we get cool, classic Emperor lines, such as, do it, from the Emperor. He orders Fenring to kill him. And Fenring looks at him. This is all done mentally through little looks and flits of the eyes and all that stuff. He says, I could kill him, Fenring thought, and knew this for a truth, because Paul was exhausted from this fight. So he's like, I'm very well trained. He is the Emperor's personal assassin. So it's one of those. This is interesting. Paul, aware of some of this from the way the time nexus boiled, understood at last why he had never seen Fenring along the webs of prescience. Fenring was one of the might-have-beens, an almost Kwisatz Haderach, crippled by a flaw in the genetic pattern. A eunuch, his talent concentrated into furtiveness and inner seclusion. A deep compassion for the Count flowed through Paul, the first sense of brotherhood he'd ever experienced. And then Fenring, reading Paul's emotions, said, Majesty, I must refuse. Won't kill him for the Emperor. And the Emperor slaps him in the mouth super hard.
He's like, because we're friends, I won't remember that.
Right. And Paul's like, well, now that we're done, we were speaking of the throne, Majesty.
Excuse me.
And the Emperor whirled, glared at Paul. I sit on the throne, he barked. He's like, you shall have a throne on Seleucia Secundus, Paul said, which is the prison planet, in case you've forgotten, where he trains his Sardaukar. I put down my arms and came here on your word of bond, the Emperor shouted. You dare threaten. Your person is safe in my presence, Paul said, and Atreides promised it. Muad'Dib, however, sentences you to your prison planet, but have no fear, Majesty. I will ease the harshness of the place with all the powers at my disposal. It shall become a garden world full of gentle things.
Your armies mean nothing now.
And he's like, and what of Arrakis, another garden world full of gentle things? The Fremen have the word of Muad'Dib, Paul said. There will be flowing water here, open to the sky, and green oases rich with good things. But we have the spice to think of too. Thus, there will always be desert on Arrakis, and fierce winds and trials to toughen a man. We Fremen have a saying. God created Arrakis to train the faithful. One cannot go against the word of God. And then Paul, this is where the Reverend Mother, Gaius Helen Mohiam, realizes what the fuck he's saying. He's like, you cannot loose these people upon the universe. He's like, you will think back to the gentle ways of the Sardaukar, Paul snapped. Which is another terrifying statement. Basically, he's like, my fighter's going to make the Sardaukar look like gentle children. Oh, man. He's like, you're a truth seer. Review your words. La, 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 la. And I love that Shani's like, all right, well, if you got to marry her, I get it. I'll go. And he's like, no, you're going nowhere. Like, I love that. It's like, my Sihaya need fear nothing, ever, he whispered. He dropped his arm, faced his mother. You will negotiate for me, mother, with Shani by your side. She has wisdom and sharp eyes, and has wisely said that no one bargains tougher than a Fremen. She'll be looking through the eyes of her love for me, and with the thought of her sons to be, what they will need. Listen to her. And it's a very dry thing. And he's like, what are your instructions? I want the Emperor's entire CHOAM company holdings as a dowry. She's like, entire? Oh yeah, he used to be stripped. I want an earldom and a CHOAM directorship for Gurney Halleck and him in the fief of Caladan. There will be titles and attendant power for every surviving Atreides man, not excepting the lowliest trooper. What of the Fremen? Jessica asked. The Fremen are mine, Paul said. What they receive shall be dispensed by Muad'Dib. It'll begin with Stilgar as governor of Arrakis, but that can wait. And then asking what Jessica wants. And she wants peace and stillness. He's like, that you will have. And then Shani's like, I don't want a title. I don't want anything. He's like, I swear to you now, he whispered, that you'll need no title. That woman over there will be my wife, and you but a concubine, because this is a political thing. We must weld peace out of this moment. Enlist the great houses of the Landsraad. We must obey the forms. Yet that princess shall have no more of me than my name. No child of mine, nor touch, nor softness of glance, nor instant of desire. So you see now, Shani said, just pouting. And then Jessica, I kind of like this moment because it's Jessica kind of closing off her own arc by settling Shani down. Because her whole upset with the Duke Leto was, she was the concubine, never the wife. Just think on it, Shani. That princess will have the name. Yet she'll live as less than a concubine, never to know a moment of tenderness from the man to whom she's bound. While we, Shani, we who carry the name of concubine, history will call us wives. That's so cool, because she's like, I get it now. Yay! And that's it. That's Dune.
And it ended in a way where now I can't not read the rest of the books.
Yeah.
Because it's literally it feels like an epilogue to a story. It's like, here's how Paul got started, and then there's more. Mm-hmm. So now I feel like I definitely have to read more.
Good. Welcome to the fold. I do want to talk about the ecology of Dune. So we're getting into the appendices here, which there's not a lot. But basically it talks about how the Fremen figured out how to trap water. We learn about the initial Kynes. So the first Kynes was Pardut Kynes, which is Liet Kynes' father. So he was the first Imperial planetologist who came down. And so he's just this super calculating guy. And for whatever reason, he was supposed to be assassinated. And the legend is that this guy fell on his own knife rather than kill him because of the things he promised this planet. Which was, bringing water and doing all this stuff. Lots of science talk, him figuring out how to trap water, planting moss to stop the dunes from rolling away after the moss is anchored in, planting grasses to further link that and find places to trap water, then vegetation on top of that sort of thing. So lots of sciencey talk. And yeah, everyone's like, why did he live? We don't know. Yes, older Liet. Uliet was his name. Uliet walked 3 paces and deliberately fell on his own knife, thus removing himself. Suicide? Some say Shai Hulud moved him. Talk about omens. Specific stuff. Here we are. Kynes set his newly trained Fremen limnologists to work. Their chief clue, leathery scraps of matter sometimes found with the spice mass after a blow. This had been ascribed to a fictional sand trout in Fremen folk stories. As facts grew into evidence, a creature emerged to explain these leathery scraps. A sand swimmer that blocked off water into fertile pockets within the porous lower strata below the 280 degrees absolute line. Though this water stealer died by the millions in each spice flow. A 5-degree change in temperature could kill it. The few survivors entered a semi-dormant cyst hibernation to emerge in 6 years as a small, about 3 meters long, sandworm. Of these, only a few avoided their larger brothers and pre-spice water pockets to emerge into maturity as the giant Shai-Hulud. Water is poisonous to Shai-Hulud, as the Fremen had long known from drowning the rare stunted worm of the Minor Erg to produce the awareness spectrum narcotic they call water of life. The stunted worm is a primitive form of Shai-Hulud that reaches a length of only about 9 meters. Now they had the circular relationship, Little Maker to pre-spice mass, Little Maker to Shai-Hulud, Shai-Hulud to scatter the spice upon which fed microscopic creatures called sand plankton. The sand plankton, food for Shai-Hulud, growing, burrowing, becoming Little Makers. So they're all essentially one species, just at various stages of development. And that's where the spice comes from. That's how the sandworms happen. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool, man.
Well, thanks for joining us, Tigeron.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging. And talking about the essential portion of the worms, he must never be destroyed, else spice wealth would end. But his inner digestive factory, with its enormous concentrations of aldehydes and acids, was a giant source of oxygen. A medium worm, about 200 meters long, discharged into the atmosphere as much oxygen as 10 square kilometers of green-growing photosynthesis surface. So he needed to keep enough spice to continue to bribe the guild, but he was still planning to terraform the entire planet. So his plan ultimately becomes Paul's plan. And by this time, his son, Liet Kynes, was 19, a full Fremen and Sandrider who had killed more than 100 Harkonnens. The imperial appointment for which the elder Kynes already had applied in the name of his son was delivered as a matter of course. The rigid class structure of the Fafrluchs had its well-ordered purpose here. The son had been trained to follow the father. The course had been set by this time. The ecological Fremen were aimed along their way. Liet Kynes only had to watch and nudge and spy upon the Harkonnens until the day his planet was afflicted by a hero. Afflicted. I love that. Appendix 2 is all about the religion and how the OC Catholic Bible happened. So it's their way to kind of try to bring peace among the universe. Yeah. And they went through several revisions because there was like one that caused a bunch of suicides. There's one that caused a bunch of murders. There's one that caused all this stuff. And so they finally kind of figured it out.
Yeah. And the way that it was described as well is just like, we're going to bring every religion together and make one final copy of just the single belief of like, there is some supreme being in the universe. And that was basically like the agreement. And then they just kept rattling off like, oh, maybe we should add this, and then it took like years.
Yeah. So one of the first developments, I won't read through all the failures because there's a lot of them, which I think is hilarious that he put this much thought into this. But one of the first ecumenical meetings came 2 major developments. 1, the realization that all religions had at least one common commandment: thou shalt not disfigure the soul. 2, the commission of ecumenical translators. And the common belief that there exists a divine essence in the universe. Every faith with more than 1 million followers was represented, and they reached a surprisingly immediate agreement on the statement of their common goal. Quote, "We are here to remove a primary weapon from the hands of disputant religions. That weapon, the claim to possession of the one and only revelation." It's basically saying, like, none of you get to say that you're the right one.
Yeah.
Not one of you. Which then, like, they talk about how comedians like locked on to this struggle, and like you could always tell the state of things by those. Or producing an instrument of love to be played in all ways. And many consider it odd that this statement provoked the worst outbreaks of violence against ecumenism. I can't say this word. Ecumenism. 20 delegates were recalled by their congregations. One committed suicide by stealing a space frigate and diving it into the sun. Let's see. It is a warning that institutions endure, that symbols endure when their meaning is lost, that there is no summa of all attainable knowledge. Religion must remain an outlet for people who say to themselves, I am not the kind of person I want to be. It must never sink into an assemblage of the self-satisfied. So again, it's interesting that like they dissect every religion and then they keep the bits that won't bring death and destruction. It takes them forever. Trying to think. There's a Muad'Dib quote buried in there. Kindness is the beginning of cruelty. Which is, with religions and politics when religion and politics ride in the same cart, when that cart is driven by a living holy man, nothing can stand in their path. And that was a Bene Gesserit saying, which I think also appeared at the start of one of the chapters. Appendix 3 is all about the Bene Gesserit specifically. The Bene Gesserit program had as its target the breeding of a person they labeled Kwisatz Haderach, a term signifying one who can be many places at once. In simpler terms, what they sought was a human with mental powers permitting him to understand and use higher-order dimensions. They were breeding for a supermentat, a human computer with some of the prescient abilities found in guild navigators. Now attend to these facts carefully. And they break down why everyone should have known Paul was the Kwisatz Haderach way earlier. So talking about how he was prescient even when he was a kid, before he ever encountered spice in a large sum. Talking about how he had also suffered the most amount of pain ever recorded in Gom Jabbar history. When they moved to the Arrakis, Paul being read as the prophet, and then Harkonnen's... Muad'Dib. Basically, it's just a long... numbered list of their failures, of all the things all the signs that they missed. Guild hated the navigators, blah blah blah. And then after that, it just starts breaking down names and who people were when they were born, when they died. So we're in the years 10,000s ish. So let's see. So Harkonnen, Vladimir dies in the year 10,193. So that's the year that this book ends. This is interesting.
It's also kind of ironic that, like, the Bene Gesserit went through all this trouble of control and the breeding program and everything, and what happened for the perfect gene to come about was chance. Because Jessica's like, nah, I just wanted a boy for my Duke.
Yep.
And, like, it didn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, and even if they had succeeded, right, it's one of those... how were they planning to control this almost perfect being, right?
Yeah.
Like how what? I just don't think, like, even if, because the other one was, they were initially going to breed. It was supposed to be Jessica was supposed to have a daughter, and they were supposed to breed that daughter with Feyd-Rautha, and that child was supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach. That was their plan. That was the Bene Gesserit plan, and then Paul's existence fucked that up. But it's like, could you imagine a child of Feyd-Rautha trying to be like, you think he would listen, he or she would listen, or he would listen to the Bene Gesserit at all? Like, he'd be such a worse monster.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yay. But yeah, that's Dune. So soon, I mean, if you guys are down, I'm happy to move on to Dune Messiah, which is much shorter, by the way, much more digestible. Which is book 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dune
Let's
Messiah.
watch the movie, though.
We should watch the movie. Yeah, I want to do a break and watch the movie before we do the other things. So we'll find a day, like a morning or an afternoon. It's long, so probably a morning, and then so we can take a break after. But yeah, we'll talk about it on Discord, so make sure you're in there, and we'll loop everybody in. We'll put it in general chat so that everybody knows, because not everybody wanted to read the book, but watch the movie together. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Any other final thoughts, you guys?
Not terribly any thoughts, but just like the comparison between the movie I look forward to, because there's just so many scenes that with reading the book yes, I agree. Yeah, so many things are just like they jump through, and it feels more just like hitting the notes instead of like the explanation of things. So when we actually get to explore and compare the movie as we're watching it, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely so many scenes in the movie that you're like, that makes sense now that I've read the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jess wants to know if we will do a chat to compare the movie versus the book. Yeah, after we watch the movie, we could probably do one episode of this and talk about how they compare.
Sure. I'm sure we'll be talking through the movie too. I feel like I will be. I won't shut up. I love yelling at that movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Shall we raid?
Yeah. Let's raid somebody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging, talking Dune with us. It's one of my favorite books. I'm so happy. The other day, I made a Dune joke reference, and both Ryan and Art laughed, and it was like one of the greatest successes of my life. It's like they got it.
Let's raid Allie Briggs' art.
I'm sweaty. I didn't turn the air on, huh?
No, I don't think we did. All right, we're raiding Allie Briggs' art.
Yay!
Thank you all so very much for joining us. Have a good rest of your day. We will be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock for our new Exacerbator time.
Yeah.
So if you get here that early, well, we're not going to be here. So sorry.
Well, point and laugh. Point and laugh.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.